Turning to Chicago and Donald Trump's confrontational appearance at the National Association of Black Journalists. Harris's campaign has already laid into it, saying Trump's hostility on stage was the same that he showed throughout his term. You remember Donald Trump clashed with the moderators, and he claimed to have been the best president for black Americans since Abraham Lincoln. The Democratic Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester spoke to Jake Tapper a moment ago, and she said the event showed Donald Trump should not be president.
I think many of us are still trying to process what he just said. I mean, first of all, the fact that he didn't know she was black says something, and that he can't pronounce her name also says something. I think what it says, and what was clearly on display, was that he should not be back in the Oval Office.
Now, Julie Roginsky, who you see there, Democratic strategist and co-founder of workers' rights group Lift Our Voices, is with me. Now, listen, J.D. Vance said just a moment ago, let me just read you what he said. He said it showed the strength and character of Donald Trump. He walked right into the nabj, showed he had the courage to take tough questions. Kamala Harris is a coward and continues to hide from scrutiny or unfriendly media. Well, it's getting nasty.
Well, it certainly showed character, right? I mean, it showed his character entirely. And I don't use the word lightly, but it showed what a horrible racist he is. I mean, to say that a woman whose father was born in Jamaica suddenly turned black, I don't know when in his mind she turned black. I mean, I don't think people turn a race or color. They either are or they aren't. To treat the African-American women on that stage who are asking him tough questions, particularly Rachel Scott of ABC News, as somehow some nasty woman. He only reserves these kinds of words for female journalists, if you notice, who ask him tough questions. I mean, he's a misogynist and he's a racist. And frankly, I'm glad that we got to see this, because
there is a section, and I guess I don't know how big or how small, of voters that will respond positively to that, because otherwise he wouldn't do it. I mean, he's a clever man at one level, and he knows his political acumen, and he must know that there is going to be an element of people who will favourably go for that.
Well, of course, it's his base, right? He wasn't speaking to the black journalists in that audience. He was speaking to his base of frankly, people who are threatened by women, threatened by black women, the same people who don't believe that Barack Obama was an American-born citizen because he's black, the same people who believe that Kamala Harris could not run for president because her mother was born in India and her father was born in Jamaica. I mean, there is a section of this population in our country who is incredibly intimidated and offended by the notion that a black man and Barack Obama, and now a black woman, can ascend to the highest office in the land. And that's exactly who he's speaking to. He's ginning up those people.
How do the Democrats respond when you have comments that are arguably as offensive and incendiary as that? There's only so many times that people like you can come on and say, he's a racist, he's a this, he's a that, he's a the other. But the polls still show even Stevens.
Well, listen, either you love Donald Trump and you know who he is, or you hate Donald Trump and you know who he is. There are very few people out there who don't know who this man is and either love him or hate him for it. What you can do is let him speak. I'm glad he did this today. I'm glad that networks carried it. I'm glad that people got to see who he is, because you don't need commentators like me or anybody else to distill it for you. You saw it firsthand, right, without any kind of filter.
So we had on the program yesterday, we were discussing which is more important, the middle ground or the turnout number in 24. And the view seems to be that turnout is where it's all at. Now, if your party can, or the Democrat Party, can turn these sort of comments into a cudgel to beat Donald Trump with, then you stand a chance of increasing the black vote, which stayed away last time.
Well, it's not just the black vote, right? It's the vote of people like me. I'm not black, but I'm incredibly offended by this. I think it's young people who don't live in this kind of world. I mean, Donald Trump in and of himself is the product of a bygone era. And I think Generation Zers, my son is one, these are not kids who are growing up believing that this kind of world should exist, regardless of their skin color. And so therefore, it's not just getting at the black vote because they're personally offended by this. It's getting people who otherwise might have said, oh, there's really not much of a difference between Trump and Biden and maybe like, you know, the good old days when and pre-COVID, it's reminding them what is at stake. The very fabric of this country, the very future of our democracy is at stake. And that's not relegated to just people who are offended by the comments that Trump made today because they happen to be Black.
Grateful that you're with us, and grateful we'll talk more. Thank you.